My name is Guy Ben-Alon, and I'm the founder of Israeli Stage. And I'm so grateful for all of you for being here for this incredible opportunity to have this cross-generational dialogue. I just wanted to give you a little bit of context of where this transcript came from. So in January 2014, there was a student named Sapir Sabach, who was a high school student, and whose teacher was Alan Verte, who you saw here, played by Lonnie Farmer. And over the course of a year, he had been asking questions in a philosophy class that made her feel uncomfortable. She felt that he was overstepping his role as a teacher and sharing his personal views, which were left-wing views. And she had written a letter to the former member of Knesset, Michael Ben-Ari, claiming that this man was a traitor. And then death threats followed suit. So what you saw today is the transcript. That's literally what happened. It was a legal procedure where the high school administration called in the teacher to have a hearing to hear his side of things before making a decision whether to fire him or not. After this hearing happened, he stopped teaching at that school, and then was fired from that entire chain of high schools within 6 months, they said, due to budget cuts. And it's just sort of emblematic of our time today, of what we can and can't say in schools. But I wanted to hear more from you. You're all in high school now. I'm a recent graduate of, well, pretty recent, I guess it's all relative, of Brookline High School, where I graduated from 2008, and I'm sure some of you are there now too. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Great. So we have a question over there. Max, you want to stand up? Mike's going to give you a mic.
Yeah, so my question was from the director's standpoint, what were like the challenges and merits and beauties of directing a piece on censorship of beliefs and censorship of ideas in this particular political climate of our country and our world?
You ask better questions than most interviewers. That's a very astute question. One, the challenge of directing a piece like this now and directing a piece like this at all is that it's not a play, it's a real life event. So whenever we can ask the playwright, hey, why'd you write this? We have no one to go to. This literally happened. And in listening to the transcript, everybody was much more reserved. All these characters were much more afraid that they would say something that they shouldn't say. Obviously, in the sort of dramatic part, you want to liven it up with drama. And I think in a time today, it's a wonderful question. I think the most important thing for us as the interpreters of this text is to make sure that you see a sympathetic view of each one of these characters. So for example, the man who played the principal, Avi, the role is not a funny role, but he turned it into somebody who's charming and sympathetic just because of who he is, and then hopefully that makes everybody consider his point of view as well. So it's important for us to infuse sympathy into each character, as unlikable as they might be.
Ask the high school students here if they have professors in their classrooms who they think are hesitant or afraid to express their opinions.
So, I'm Lauren. I'm a high school student at the Newman School, and I just came from Boston Latin School, and if anyone has watched the news in the past 3-ish years, there has been this whole scandal about what teachers can and cannot say about the matters of racism, and also not spoken to the public about Judaism and the Semitism, that has been spoken at the school. And I was told during a class, like, as a Jew, do you think it's right? And I don't think that's definitely not right to say that to me. And then now at my new school, there's definitely teachers who don't say their political opinions for the sake of not getting in an argument. But then there's also teachers that are very open about the political opinions, which also make the climate of the school and more open and good environment.
Thank you. Any other high school students I see? A hand.
All right, I'm Jake. I used to go to a school, Driscoll. So when I was in 7th grade, I loved this teacher. His name was Mr. Chen. He was one of my favorite teachers ever. So one day, he said something not like the most appropriate thing. He said, he didn't say I mean, it wasn't bad, it was just, which was right. So another teacher heard that, heard what he said, and then they went to the town of Brookline, and it got everyone was worried. He didn't come for school for a while, at least a month, and everyone was wondering what was going on, what was because he was a great teacher. So we finally realized I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks in that he said something, but it wasn't for instance, for this story, that was his point of view on what he wants the students to be learning about. So I think the teacher should also get a say, even if it can cause a sense of inappropriate but he still has the power to do what he wants the class to do.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, great.
So I went to Brookline High School, and I go to Brookline High School, and I really like how in the story there was such a wide spectrum of political beliefs among the teacher and students. And Brookline High School is really interesting because it's a very leftist, yet very pro-Zionist echo chamber. So we don't necessarily have that same problem because all the teachers and the students seem to have the same beliefs. So teachers don't really feel afraid to sort of say controversial or leftist beliefs because that's what all the students, the vast majority of the students believe, and that's what the vast majority of the teachers believe.
What about, have you encountered any students or any teachers who feel attacked or siloed because they don't agree with those views?
So I have a few friends who would describe themselves as more centrist or conservative, but they sort of think of it as, because it's such an echo chamber, it's not necessarily that they feel siloed, but it's that because so little of their beliefs are being represented, they feel that that it's pointless to speak about their more conservative beliefs because it won't be echoed by their students. Actually, in the past year there's been a lot of discussions in our school newspaper and in sort of the school government elections. There were a lot of speeches about sort of how this echo chamber can be so harmful to the students, but that movement hasn't really taken effect.
Do you want who wants to share?
Yeah?
Okay. I'm Ella. I go to Newton Country Day School of the Sacred Heart, which is an all-girls Catholic school, and I'm the only Jew out of about 500 people, faculty and students included. So at my school, there was a teacher, well, there's actually a few teachers in the religion department that will correct you if you have, not a different belief, but if I would say something about the Jewish scriptures being different than the Catholic Bible, I would be not told I was wrong, but kind of dismissed. So I brought that up, and the headmistress at my school was very alarmed and dealt with it. But I just thought.
How did you deal with it?
Well, she told him the religion teacher that was he can't really let his beliefs or the beliefs of the school as a whole, I guess. He can't, because not everybody's Catholic. There are a lot of Christians. And so he can't really say that the Catholic belief is the correct belief compared to Jewish or Christian. Well covered. Yeah.
it's interesting so in this, in this particular town where this happened, and most of the composition of his class, of Adam's class, was centrist and central right, and then there were a few students who are sort of extreme right on the Israeli map. And Adam, as was stated in the play, interestingly enough, 14 of the students in a 15-student class said that they were fine with him sharing his views because he asked of them questions that provoked their views and to think about their views in a different way. And it was just Sapir who said that he was overstepping his bounds.
It's amazing how one voice has power.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm a 10 parent, and I'm also a teacher and educator, and a theater person, and I love this presentation.
We love all three of those advantages.
I love that how it echoed the history of theater with plays like The Children's Hour and Crime of Biscuit and Brody, which is a play that was written about a teacher after World War I in Scotland who is very opinionated. It's in an all-girls school, and she kind of waxes poetic about her opinions about the war. She's supposed to have lost a lover, a teenage lover in the war, and she ends up basically getting busted for expressing her opinions. And The Children's Hour, if the teens don't know it, is a play about two teachers in an all-women's, all-girls school who are accused of being lesbians by a student, and sort of going down that rabbit hole in the 40s and 50s. So I love how this echoes sort of, and also the play Carnage, where you have like 4 people all sort of with their own view of how something happened. I'm wondering what happened to the girl. Did she get to stay out her stay in the high school? And I'm wondering if the high schoolers realize that teachers actually have to go up against boards like this and fight for their jobs in order for either their liberal opinions or their conservative opinions or just their opinions in general. Like if this is like the first time students have maybe been aware. My first teaching job was a theater job in a private school many, many years ago during the Sandinista time, and we had a teacher who would not shut up about the details of torture. And I actually thought it was incredible as a young teacher, his high school and middle school students walked out on him because he would not stop going into the details.
So it's an interesting thing, just to answer on a few of those.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if the students can also talk to that, if they knew that these kind of boards happen in school.
It wasn't so much, it's not only in the 40s, but also in the 90s. Dr. Bob Weintraub, who was the former headmaster of Brooklyn High School, told an audience after the hearing that in 1992, he got a call from a concerned parent who said, my daughter's teacher came out as a lesbian today and I'd like her fired because we are extremely religious. And Dr. Bob said, he sort of put the phone receiver away and then he said, I'd like for you to come in. And she said, I don't want to come in, I just want this teacher fired. And as an administrator, he had the responsibility to have the student in the school and the teacher remain a part of the school. So he called the parent in for a hearing. Let's hear for some of the other students.
So bravo. I'm a professor at Emerson College. I've been there 45 years. It has been an incredible evolution that's going on in the country right now, for better or for worse. So what I want to say is that we're a community, and this is not, students aren't exonerated, faculty aren't exonerated. This is happening at our college now. It's the most LGBTQ-friendly school in the United States, but this is happening. Students are speaking out because they feel their racist remarks being made in the classroom. Faculty are speaking out because they feel like they're being incriminated. And we are losing the fact that we are a community. And we need to have a dialogue like this. And we need not to point fingers. We need to learn how to listen. And I think the faculty at Emerson right now, we had 100 students walk into a faculty meeting 2 weeks ago after they did this 2 years ago, suggesting and demanding that we continue with cultural competency for faculty and students to end this siege of racism and bigotry that is going on. And so I encourage you as high school students to talk to your faculty, to talk to one another, to not point fingers, but to really engage in dialogue with one another. Because that is the only way it's going to be, we're going to move forward.
Hi, I'm Henry.
Hi, Henry.
Hi, I went to Lawrence, but I heard appears last year that 2 subs got fired because one of the subs did something racist to someone, and the person went to the principal office and told the principal and asked up that I could him subbing off at any school that matter. So they had it was history, so they had free class that day.
So that raises a question for me that throws to the teens or grown-ups here. Where's the line? Right? I think I'm hearing that there's a desire, right, for tolerating, welcoming, including many different viewpoints, but where is the line? When is it that someone crosses that line that it's not safe for them to be there or not appropriate? Teachers, students, what do you think?
I think that there is a big difference between an identity and a political statement or position. And I think that being who you are and existing in an environment is very different than putting your views on students. Not that this teacher was putting their views on the students, I personally think he did the right thing, but that's beside the point. I think that it's a very fine line. I think it can be seen as offensive if you call someone's identity a political statement.
That's great, and this was something that was in the play, right? There was it actually it's exactly relating. She says, is it a political stance or is it an opinion? Right.
We're talking about what we can do about these things. Like I could just give an incident of something that happened just yesterday. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she says to me something, and then says Indian giver. And it immediately jumped on her, and she said she forgot that was the kind of thing was not acceptable. But I said it was never acceptable.
I'm a retired teacher from the Brookline school system, but I'd like to point out something that the teacher said, that was the first time that he had ever met the principal. That's unexcusable.
Okay.
So on the topic of, I guess, like, deciding where the line is as far as, like, opinions, I think that as long as people aren't, like, inciting or encouraging violence, I think it's okay to sort of, like, be open about your opinions. Like, even if they may seem extreme, as long as you're not inciting violence, then I think it's okay to express your opinions.
What happened to the girl?
The student, she remained in school. Yeah. There was no disciplinary action.
So my experience with issues of dialogue in school is probably somewhat different from a lot of the other students here. First, because I go to a private school, and second of all, because the school I go to is significantly smaller. It's only about 300 students. And what my school has tried to do is, not only within classrooms, we've tried to have dialogues around issues, but also we've tried to put together school-wide assemblies. Most recently, several this fall in response to the Charlottesville march. And I would say for my school, the line that's been drawn is between civility and basically direct threats or calls to action. And so if students or teachers, for that matter, are presenting their ideas in a civil way, they're trying to make them clear, they're making them presentable, and they're not violent or racist or unacceptable in any other way, and they're taken in and they're heard by the community. But I would say the line is really crossed when people start urging direct violence or making racist statements, and I'd say that, to me, seems like a logical line.
So, something I'm finding very, very interesting in our conversation. My name is Mike. I work here. Something I'm finding very interesting in our conversation. My colleague Bridget saw your prior production, your prior performance. This is the second, right? So she saw the first one, and when she came back to the office, she said it was wonderful. I'm so fascinated. No one in the discussion said anything about social media and the role that social media played in the story, and whether or not the fact that the way the student went public was to use Facebook and to somehow get, manipulate the story so that it wound up on the Facebook page of a prominent politician and so on and so forth. No one said anything about it. And she was like, I'm sure the teens will say something about it. Nobody said anything about it. So I was just really fascinated, and not to start, we're nearing the end of our time. Do you think that social media changed the nature of this? Or, as some of the other comments came, there were others who were the mom called and said, my daughter's teacher came out and I want her fired, bang. So it didn't require social media. Did social media change the story? Yes or no? Yes, it did. Raise your hand. Anybody think? I have a comment as to how.
I actually can talk loud.
There you go. You're right in the middle. I can't get to you.
So I think social media just, having time to deal with this for the past 12 years or so, I think people say things on social media that they would not necessarily say in such an extreme way. I think it just inhibits people because they don't really have to take actual ownership of it. There's a certain anonymity to it. There's also not the face-to-face that somehow frees people and they become less intimidated. And so people, if you're face-to-face with them, would say, talk in a perfectly respectful way, disagree in a respectful way, are saying things like, this person should be extinct, or kill him, or who has a Colt 45, and things like that. And I definitely think that it disinhibits people.
Yeah, and interesting, in this case, in 2014, obviously social media is propelling very fast. She actually said the same things she said online in class. But perhaps we were dealing with not a normal student. One of the students wanted to respond.
Hi, again. I'm back. I think social media has a major influence, and I think that the principal also saying I'm not on Facebook. I think that's also, at least for my parents, my mom hates Facebook. She just doesn't understand it. So, and neither do I, to be honest. But I just think that also putting it out there online for the whole world to see, not just for those people around there, and then for the administrators to say that our opinions, teens' opinions, are so influenced by these professionals that we don't have our own opinions, and that social media was only the opinions based on that fact, at least for me, got me very angry, because I know for a fact that I have my own opinions based not off of my teachers, and that social media was almost the basis of that was very prominent.
Thank you for sharing that. We'll take two more comments if we can.
There's another issue which we're plagued by now, we're retired scientists. That there are things that are opinion and there are things that are fact. And that we're treating fact like climate change and vaccine utility as opinions. These are not opinions. These require statistical background and careful reading. So that we're in a dark time, not only because opinions are being snuffled, but because fact that reality-based thinking is also not very popular these days.
We have Kellyanne Conway to thank.
And off of what Lauren was saying about like having her own opinion, like separate from what her teachers say to her, is one of the things I found very interesting about the play, because they kept saying that this, I believe she's like 19, but regardless, this teenager was being so strongly influenced by, like, was taking what her teacher said and interpreting it in her own way. It seemed like almost unrealistic to me today, because I feel like teenage youth have the ability to have their own thoughts and opinions and take teachers' like opinions as their opinions. And it just seems sort of odd to me that that student, like, or the administration just assumed that the student couldn't do that.
Yeah, adding on to what the past couple of people have been saying, I think there's this idea that was presented in this piece that was interesting, and it's about whether the ideas of youth have merit and whether they're valuable in discourse. I think it was off-putting for me to see that administrators had to speak on behalf of a student when very clearly a student could have been there and been presenting their own ideas. And I think especially there's this idea nowadays of, is the ideas of our youth important? And I think the fact that, you know, some people over here, our generation, are going to be making the new opinions and are going to be the new administrators and are going to be having the new hearings, we have merit in these type of discussions, and I think we have more to offer than people believe.
I just love that. I want to share with you two statistics. One is that in a Pew study that was conducted in the last 2 years, that almost 30%, it's 29%, almost 30% of the population under the age of 40 does not believe that democracy is the best way to govern, which is an astonishing figure in the United States. And another Pew study, which was done in 38 countries, had a median of 58% of people who believe that there should be freedom of expression. So essentially, that means that there's around 40% of people who believes that it's okay in 38 nations for government to have censorship on what we say. I think it really relates to what you're saying, because I agree with you. Millennials are going to shape the future. I say this as a millennial. The millennials are going to be shaping what hearings look like, what schools look like, what administrators act like. And I think, to your point, the more and more we engage and the more and more we speak and have dialogues like this, and not only speak but also listen to each other's perspectives, the more and more we will raise the next generation of democratic citizens. Tonight, you've all been exemplifying those types of citizens. Again, it goes against the statistics of what Pew study tells us, and it's extremely heartening and very humbling to hear all of you share your perspectives and hear each other's perspectives as well. So I want to thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for bringing this amazing and very different sort of play. Just 1 second, let me say one thing, and I promise the teams you can have a snack and I'll give you your phones back. This is different.
And tweet about this.
What we did tonight is different. There was no remote where you can hit info to get the synopsis. I didn't give you your phone so you could play Candy Crush or whatever it is you do while you were listening. This was different. This was from a different country. This was a different perspective. And I think we all talking mostly to the teens, but probably the grown-ups in the room too. We had to spend some time discerning and really listen, understand who each of these characters were and what they believed. And that was hard work, some more than others, and that was part of the project we did tonight. What does it mean to exist in a community where we don't immediately understand everything that's happening, and we don't understand everyone's perspectives, and we don't necessarily even get every nuance of the culture? So, thank you for being good listeners. Thank you all for coming to Temple Israel. We welcome you. We hope to see you again. My name again is Rabbi Susie Jacobson. If you want to connect, just come talk to me. Have a great night.